And across our country, people will be waking up to the news, relieved that a weight has been lifted, a burden finally removed from the shoulders of this great nation. And now we can look forward again, walk into the morning, the sunlight of hope, pale at first, but getting stronger through the day, shining once again on a country with the opportunity after 14 years to get its future back.
In the latest local elections, a clear shift in the political landscape has raised serious concerns for Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. Constituencies that were once solid Labour strongholds have witnessed a significant drop in support, revealing troubling signs for the party's future under Starmer's leadership. One of the most notable upsets occurred in the Mayfield ward of Redbridge, an area northeast London that had been a Labour-dominated region for years. 2 years ago, Labour secured an impressive 71% of the vote here, reflecting their solid backing from the local community, which includes a large Muslim population. However, this week, Labour's hold on the ward collapsed as the Ilford Independents claimed victory with 42.5% of the vote. In contrast, Labour's share plummeted by almost 45%, which left the political community stunned. The Conservative Party trailed behind with a mere 19.4%, while Reform UK received a minimal portion of the vote. This defeat underscores a growing disillusionment with Labour, particularly within groups that had traditionally been loyal to the party. The shift in Mayfield is a direct result of dissatisfaction with several controversial decisions made under Starmer's leadership, including the removal of winter fuel payments for pensioners and the ongoing approval of arms sales to Israel, despite escalating tensions in the Middle East. These policies have caused outrage, especially among Muslim voters, many of whom feel increasingly alienated by the party. This frustration and anger within these communities were clearly reflected in the election results. This loss in Mayfield is not an isolated incident. Labour also faced a significant defeat in Penlegaya, Swansea, another traditional Labour stronghold. There, Labour finished in a distant fourth place with only 6.6% of the vote, a stark decline of 5.6 percentage points from the last election. The victory went to an independent candidate who captured 63.9% of the vote, with Reform UK and the Liberal Democrats securing meaningful portions of support as well. The losses in these constituencies highlight a worrying trend for Labour. The party, once closely associated with representing the working class, is struggling to connect with crucial voter groups. It appears that under Starmer's leadership, Labour is losing touch with the very people it once sought to protect. These setbacks point to a much larger issue: Labour's failure to remain relevant and address the key concerns of its base, leading to a growing divide within the party. The results from Mayfield and Penlegaya paint a bleak picture of a political shift that Labour can no longer ignore. The political landscape in the UK is undergoing significant changes, with Labour's performance in key constituencies showing a noticeable decline. This trend is not isolated but is spreading across the country, particularly in areas where Labour had previously been strong. In Penlegaya, Swansea, a historically Labour-dominated region in South Wales, the election results revealed the party's shrinking influence. Labour finished a distant fourth, securing only 6.6% of the vote, a sharp drop of 5.6 percentage points from the previous election. Once a solid base for the party, South Wales showed clear signs of Labour's erosion, as an independent candidate emerged victorious with a commanding 63.9% of the vote. The strong showings of both Reform UK and the Liberal Democrats, who secured 10.7% and 13.6% of the vote respectively, only added to the alarming nature of the results. These losses are particularly concerning for Labour, given that South Wales has historically been considered one of its strongholds. In this region, the party's values of social justice, workers' rights and public services had long resonated with voters. To see Labour falter here, losing out to independent candidates and smaller parties, marks a dramatic shift in its electoral fortunes. The growing disillusionment among voters in South Wales is not an isolated case, but part of a broader trend of dissatisfaction with Labour's leadership under Keir Starmer. Many in Swansea and similar areas feel that the party has abandoned them, with policies that no longer align with their concerns. The lack of focus on critical local issues like economic inequality and underfunded public services has left voters feeling disconnected from a party they once trusted. Instead of being seen as a champion for the working class, Labour is now viewed by some as a party of the establishment, more concerned with appeasing political elites than addressing the needs of ordinary citizens. This perception is further fueled by public backlash against Starmer's policies, especially welfare cuts and austerity measures that have disproportionately harmed working families. The rise of Reform UK, a relatively new party with a smaller presence in the political arena, gaining traction in traditionally Labour areas, is particularly telling. It suggests that many voters are looking for an alternative to the mainstream political parties, driven by frustration with the status quo. As results from Swansea and other constituencies continue to unfold, it is becoming clear that Labour's traditional base is under significant threat. The party's failure to adapt to changing political dynamics and reconnect with its core supporters could have lasting consequences. The question now is whether Labour can reclaim its footing or if it will continue to lose ground to smaller, more dynamic political forces. The rise of Reform UK in national polls has sent shockwaves through the British political landscape, signalling a major shift in voter allegiance and preferences. For the first time ever, Reform UK has surpassed Labour in national polling, securing 26% of the vote, ahead of Labour at 23% and the Conservatives at 22%. This dramatic change underscores a growing disillusionment with both the Labour Party and the Conservatives, with an increasing number of voters now seeking a credible alternative. Historically considered a fringe party, Reform UK has managed to gain significant traction, moving from the margins to a more central position in British politics. Recent polling figures indicate that this rise is not a temporary surge but part of a wider discontent with the traditional political system, as many voters feel sidelined by the two main parties. Reform UK's recent success has been driven by several factors, including widespread frustration with Keir Starmer's leadership, concerns over economic mismanagement, and mounting dissatisfaction with the handling of critical issues like immigration, public services, and the ongoing cost of living crisis. The party's anti-establishment rhetoric, combined with its promises to challenge the political elite, has struck a chord with voters who feel increasingly disconnected from the traditional parties. Reform UK's message resonates particularly with those who feel left behind by both Labour and the Conservatives, making it the only viable choice for change in the eyes of many. As national polls continue to show Reform UK gaining ground, its recent success in by-elections, particularly in constituencies that were once Labour strongholds, indicates a significant shift in the political landscape. This surge in popularity has led political analysts to question whether Reform UK is on the brink of becoming a major political force, capable of challenging the established dominance of Labour and the Conservatives. With Labour's leadership under fire and discontent spreading among voters, it is becoming clear that Reform UK is tapping into a growing wave of frustration with the political status quo. If the current trends continue, Reform UK could play a crucial role in shaping the future of British politics. The traditional two-party system is being increasingly questioned, and with its surge in support, Reform UK is positioning itself as a key player in the upcoming elections. However, whether the party can maintain its momentum and transform its rising popularity into sustained political success remains to be seen. One thing is certain: British politics is undergoing a significant transformation, and Reform UK's rise could signal the beginning of a new era in the country's political future. The Labour Party is facing an increasingly dire situation, with growing challenges that threaten its future. The party's efforts to regain the trust of voters have been hampered by significant losses in recent by-elections and troubling trends in national polling. Labour's once solid dominance in key areas is rapidly fading, with Reform UK making significant inroads in constituencies that were historically Labour strongholds. This has sparked a period of introspection within the party, as it grapples with its leadership, direction, and policies going forward. The rise of Reform UK, now surpassing Labour in some national polls, has only added to Labour's mounting difficulties. Once positioned as the champion of the working class, Labour's traditional message of economic equality, enhanced public services, and tackling global issues like climate change has become increasingly difficult to uphold. Keir Starmer's leadership has come under heavy scrutiny, with many accusing him of being too cautious and detached from the everyday struggles of the public. His handling of significant matters such as the economy, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the party's position on Brexit has alienated voters who feel disconnected from his approach. The ongoing cost of living crisis has underscored this divide. While Starmer attempts to maintain an optimistic outlook on the economy, with claims that wages are rising and inflation is under control, millions of working-class families continue to suffer from rising costs and stagnant wages. Critics argue that Labour's policies seem increasingly focused on appealing to the middle class and elites, rather than offering real solutions for ordinary citizens. This perception has deepened as the cost of living crisis worsens, painting Labour as out of touch with the very people it once sought to represent. The internal divisions within Labour are also becoming more apparent. Many MPs who once supported Starmer's leadership are growing frustrated by the lack of progress and his failure to connect with the electorate. This frustration has led to several high-profile resignations and defections, further weakening the party. With national elections on the horizon, the pressure on Starmer to regain control and deliver tangible results is mounting. Labour's once reliable base is quickly eroding, and its future remains uncertain. Reform UK's rise presents an additional challenge, as disaffected voters seek alternatives that promise real change and a break from the traditional political establishment. The party is facing a critical moment. The coming months will determine whether Labour can find its footing, rebuild trust with voters, and offer a compelling vision for the future, or if it will continue its decline into political irrelevance. The increasing success of Reform UK in national polls and its strong performance in by-elections has sent shockwaves through the political establishment, putting Labour in a difficult position. Once considered a minor force, Reform UK is now emerging as a serious challenger, gaining traction in key areas that were traditionally Labour strongholds. This shift underscores the growing disillusionment with the traditional political system and highlights the urgent need for Labour to rethink its approach. For years, Labour has struggled to adapt to a rapidly changing political environment. Under Keir Starmer's leadership, the party has faced criticism for being too centrist, disconnected from its core base, and reluctant to challenge the status quo. Many former Labour supporters have voiced their dissatisfaction, feeling the party has strayed from its working-class roots in favour of appealing to the middle class and political elites. This shift in priorities has provided an opening for Reform UK, which promises to offer a fresh approach and break free from the traditional political narratives. The rise of Reform UK has exposed serious flaws in Labour's leadership and placed Starmer under increasing pressure. His leadership has been criticised for a lack of boldness and for failing to offer concrete solutions to the country's most urgent problems. As the cost of living crisis continues to devastate working families, Labour's inability to address these issues effectively has created an opening for Reform UK to capitalise on voter dissatisfaction. Reform UK's anti-establishment message resonates with voters who are fed up with the perceived stagnation of the mainstream parties. While Labour continues to emphasise economic recovery and public service reforms, the reality for millions of Britons is far less promising. Soaring energy bills, stagnant wages, and deteriorating public services have shown that Labour's promises have not been enough to alleviate the struggles of ordinary citizens. In contrast, Reform UK has positioned itself as a party that will prioritise the needs of the people over the interests of big business and political elites. Labour's failure to offer real solutions has led many to question whether the party is capable of addressing the nation's deepest challenges. The growing support for Reform UK signals that voters are no longer willing to accept a political establishment that has failed to deliver meaningful change for years. The party's appeal is gaining traction among those who feel neglected by both Labour and the Conservatives, and as Labour continues to falter, Reform UK is gaining ground. The key question now is whether Labour can regain its status as the voice of the working class, or if it will continue losing support to a party that is perceived to offer real, transformative change. The rise of Reform UK casts a long shadow over Labour's future, and the pressure is mounting for the party to prove that it still has the ability to lead and address the pressing needs of the British people. As the political landscape in the UK evolves, dissatisfaction with both Labour and the Conservatives has created an opening for Reform UK to make significant strides in British politics. The increasing frustration of the electorate has turned the rise of Reform UK into more than just a fleeting phenomenon. It signals a deeper shift in the political conversation. reflecting the public's desire for genuine change. For years, both major parties have faced criticism for failing to address the everyday concerns of citizens. This has created fertile ground for Reform UK, which has capitalized on the growing discontent, offering a fresh alternative to the traditional political system. Reform UK's anti-establishment message and commitment to challenging the status quo have resonated with a broad segment of voters, many of whom feel alienated by the established political parties. Their rhetoric of reform, change and disruption is appealing to those who believe that the Labour and Conservative parties have ignored their needs for far too long. The rise of Reform UK is especially striking because it highlights a deep lack of trust in the current political leadership, which many believe has become too entrenched and disconnected from the people it is supposed to represent. Under Keir Starmer, Labour has struggled to reconnect with its working-class base, and the party's failure to offer practical solutions to the ongoing cost of living crisis has only fueled the perception that it is out of touch with the realities faced by ordinary Britons. The public's growing frustration with Labour's inability to address the most pressing issues in their lives, such as soaring energy bills, stagnant wages, and deteriorating public services, has made the party vulnerable to the rise of new political forces like Reform UK. As the party continues to gain momentum, Reform UK's increasing presence in national polls and local elections signals a clear desire for change. Voters are searching for an alternative that genuinely reflects their concerns and aspirations. Reform UK's success is not merely a product of political opportunism, but a reflection of a growing dissatisfaction with the status quo. This dissatisfaction has become more evident as both Labour and the Conservatives continue to offer policies that many voters see as inadequate or out of step with the challenges facing the country. The growing support for Reform UK is a stark reminder that the political establishment in Britain is at a crossroads. As the party continues to gain ground, it's clear that the electorate is no longer willing to accept the dominance of the two major parties. Whether or not Reform UK can sustain this momentum remains to be seen, but its rise marks a significant shift in the British political scene, signalling the growing demand for a new political direction. See you again.